All right, strap in, everyone, because today we're diving deep into the world of angels in Islam.
Oh, this is going to be good.
It is. We're going way beyond the basics.
Absolutely.
We're going to explore how they shape the universe, how they influence our lives, and we're focusing on the teachings of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad.
Very cool.
So you're looking to really grasp their purpose, their actions, and the sources we have.
Okay.
We have a study guide, we have excerpts from his book, Essence of Islam, and some extra notes to help us along the way.
Yeah, what makes this so interesting is that Mirza Ghulam Ahmad doesn't just, tell us about angels.
Right.
He connects their very existence to, the very fabric of reality.
Okay.
So his argument is that physical beings like us, we're kind of limited.
Yeah.
We're veiled from directly experiencing, divine grace.
So it's like we need something to bridge that gap for us?
That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
And that bridge is built by angels.
Oh, okay.
So they act as these intermediaries, transmitting this divine energy and guidance.
So like a conduit?
Like a conduit, yeah.
Okay.
So he uses this really great analogy of the sun and the eye.
I like that one.
Yeah.
It's like we need sunlight to see.
Yes.
And in a similar way, we need angels to kind of perceive and receive this spiritual nourishment. It's not just about seeing, but about truly understanding and growing.
It's about growth.
Yeah.
Yeah. And angels, they kind of act as these, conduits, ensuring that God's will kind of flows into creation. Think of them as God's limbs.
Okay.
Extensions of his power reaching into every corner of existence.
So they're not just sitting on clouds playing harps, they're actively shaping the universe.
Right. They're actively shaping and influencing.
Wow.
Yeah, and their influence is really interesting because it operates on so many levels. The Quran actually describes 3 types of angels.
Oh, okay.
So some are microscopic.
Okay.
They compose the very building blocks of our bodies and even our souls.
Wait a minute. So the tiny particles that make up who we are a type of angel?
Yes, exactly.
That's a whole new level of design.
Yeah, so intricate, right.
Yeah.
And then you have these grand celestial angels.
Okay.
Think the sun, the moon, and the clouds. Yeah. These are the forces that govern weather patterns, seasons, the very rhythms of nature.
So when we look up at a starry night sky, we're not just seeing celestial bodies, we're seeing angelic power.
You got it.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's not just passive observation either, right?
Okay.
These angels are actively involved in the functioning of the cosmos.
Right.
They're described as the life of planets, driving the winds, causing rain, guiding the stars in their courses.
It's like they're conducting this cosmic symphony.
Right.
But if angels are embedded in, the very fabric of creation, where do, those more familiar angels like Gabriel or Michael fit in?
Those are the third type. The higher powers.
Okay.
That are entrusted with these very specific missions and revelations.
Right.
Think of Gabriel delivering messages from God, including, the Quran itself.
Okay, so we've got these, micro-level angels shaping our being.
Yes.
Then we have these angels as celestial bodies governing the universe.
That's right.
And then we have these powerful individual angels carrying out commands. I mean, it's like angels are everywhere. They're woven into everything.
They are. They really are.
Wow.
And, this kind of interweaving even extends to the human realm because angels can sometimes manifest in human form.
Wait, hold on. Angels walking amongst us. What does that even look like?
Think of it as a temporary, purposeful manifestation.
Okay.
There's mention of Gabriel appearing as Dahiya Kalbi to teach the Prophet Muhammad about, the intricacies of faith.
Right.
It's not about, assuming a permanent human identity, but serving a specific divine purpose.
So it's like a divine hologram projected into our world for a specific task.
I like that, yeah.
Okay.
A divine hologram.
But if angels can shapeshift like that and exert such influence, does that make them inherently superior to humans?
That's a fascinating question.
Yeah.
And Mirza Ghulam Ahmad is very clear on this.
Okay.
Angels, while essential, are not superior to humans. He emphasizes their role as servants of God, carrying out his will.
So celestial colleagues working towards a common goal.
You could say that,
Yeah.
Their lack of ego, their complete submission to God, it allows them to really function as perfect instruments of his will. They deliver messages, they guide creation,
Okay.
but they don't hold a higher rank than those they serve.
That makes me think of that Quranic verse about angels prostrating to man.
Yeah.
It's always seemed a bit confusing.
Right. It's often misunderstood.
Yeah.
But what it signifies is not like worship, but rather a profound acknowledgement of like the spiritual potential within humanity.
Okay.
You know, they shower blessings upon those who achieve a high level of spiritual purity, recognizing their elevated status.
So it's more about acknowledging, like, the incredible heights humans can reach spiritually.
Yes.
Not about inherent superiority.
Right.
That's actually pretty empowering.
It is. And this connection between angels and human spiritual development, it's really beautifully illustrated through this concept of the Holy Spirit.
Okay, so where does the Holy Spirit fit into all of this?
Right.
I'm particularly curious about this meeting of the two loves phrase.
Yes. So the Holy Spirit is a manifestation of divine grace within a person,
Okay.
closely associated with the angel Gabriel.
Okay.
It's not like a separate being, but rather a state of being.
Okay.
And you're right, that phrase really captures its essence. It occurs when a person's love for God reaches a point where it kind of merges with God's love for them.
Like a perfect harmony.
Exactly, a spiritual resonance
Wow.
between the human and the divine.
That's beautiful.
And through this meeting, a permanent reflection of the Holy Spirit kind of takes root within the individual, and it bestows them with this spiritual light, guidance, and blessings.
This is getting pretty deep.
It is.
We've gone from microscopic angels to cosmic forces to angels walking amongst us, and now to this merging of love and divine grace. I mean, it's clear that angels are much more than just like winged figures in stories.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And there's one more aspect we haven't touched upon yet.
Okay.
That really highlights their like active role.
Right.
And that's the connection between angels, shooting stars, and those pesky Satans.
Wait, you mentioned something about angels battling Satans earlier.
I did.
What's that all about?
So it's not a war in the conventional sense, but there's definitely a clash of forces happening.
Okay.
Mirza Ghulam Ahmad explains that angels use shooting stars to like repel Satans.
Oh, wow.
And kind of disrupt their negative influence.
Hold on. So those streaks of light across the night sky aren't just beautiful phenomena. They're like weapons in a spiritual battle.
Weapons might be a strong word.
It's more about the angels using their light to counteract the darkness associated with Satan's.
So it's not about physically harming them, but like disrupting their energy, their ability to influence us negatively.
Precisely. Think of it like a spiritual countermeasure. You know, maintaining a balance between good and evil forces in the universe.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty fascinating stuff.
That is.
Right. Yeah, it's a fascinating concept, this idea that there's this like constant interplay of light and darkness happening all around us, even in the celestial realm.
It really makes you wonder what other like unseen forces are at play. You know, we've talked about the different roles angels play, but like what are they actually like?
Right.
Are they like these ethereal beings with wings and halos that we often imagine?
Well, that's a common depiction.
Right.
But Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, he doesn't really focus on their physical appearance.
Oh, okay.
He really emphasizes their spiritual essence.
You know, their complete lack of ego, their unwavering devotion to God.
Right.
They exist solely to carry out his will.
So less about the physical form and more about their like pure selfless service.
Exactly. And it's this purity that makes them such effective conduits for divine grace. They're not clouded by like personal desires or motivations, allowing God's will to flow through them, you know, unobstructed.
It's a pretty powerful image, this idea of angels as like perfectly transparent vessels. It makes you think about like our own struggles with ego and how that can sometimes block us from experiencing that same connection with the divine.
You know, that's a point that Mirza Ghulam Ahmad actually addresses.
Oh, okay.
He says that it's precisely because of like our human limitations,
Right.
our veiled existence,
Right. Yeah.
that we need angels.
Okay.
He says we simply wouldn't be able to handle that raw, unfiltered, you know, divine energy.
So they act as like a buffer, protecting us from a force that would be too overwhelming.
That's a great way to think about it. They mediate between this infinite power of God and the finite capacity of humans. It's part of a larger divine system designed to, you know, nurture and guide us.
Okay, so I'm starting to like see the bigger picture here. You know, angels aren't just these like fantastical beings flitting about. they're an integral part of creation,
Right.
working behind the scenes to ensure like the smooth functioning of the universe
Yes.
and our own spiritual development.
And remember, this system it's dynamic.
Okay.
Mirza Ghulam Ahmad talks about how God's commands, they change and adapt according to the needs of his creation.
Okay.
He compares it to like a child in the womb being nourished, first by blood, then milk, then other foods as it grows.
So it's not that God is changing his mind.
Right.
It's that his actions are like perfectly tailored to the needs of each moment.
Exactly.
Wow.
He uses this example of the laws of nature.
Okay.
They operate consistently.
Right.
But
Yeah.
their manifestation can vary depending on, the context. Like gravity affects a feather and a boulder in the same way.
Right.
But the outcome is drastically different.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
So God's attributes are constant,
Okay.
but how they're expressed depends on the situation.
It's almost like he's like constantly orchestrating this cosmic symphony,
Right.
adjusting and adapting to like ensure harmony across this incredibly complex system.
And within that system, angels are his instruments.
Okay.
They carry out those commands,
Right.
influencing everything from the particles of our bodies to the movements of celestial bodies,
Wow.
ultimately guiding us toward our spiritual purpose.
So we've talked about angels on this universal scale, but what about their impact on our like individual lives?
Right.
How do they interact with us on a personal level?
That's where it gets really, really interesting. Mirza Ghulam Ahmad talks about angels influencing us in these subtle but really profound ways. He says they can inspire good thoughts, guide our actions,
Right.
even help us develop our talents and abilities.
So it's not like we have a guardian angel dictating our every move.
Oh,
It's
yes.
more about like gentle nudges, whispers of inspiration,
Sure.
helping us to see that path of righteousness.
He emphasizes that we have free will,
Okay.
but angels can, eliminate the path, making it easier to choose wisely.
That's actually quite comforting, especially when you consider like all the difficult decisions we face in life.
Yeah.
It's like knowing there's a guiding hand even when we feel lost or uncertain. But what about those times when we make like the wrong choices? Where do Satans fit into all of this?
Well, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad acknowledges that there's also this negative spiritual influence at play,
Right.
constantly tempting us to, stray from the path of God.
So it's like this cosmic tug of war. Angels pulling us towards the light, Satan's trying to drag us into the darkness.
You could say that
Yeah.
he actually compares the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him,
Okay.
to like the highest point on the line of creation, embodying, pure goodness.
Right.
And then with Satan at the opposite end,
Okay.
representing like pure evil.
And we're caught in the middle.
Right. Constantly being pulled in both directions.
Yeah.
That's the challenge of being human. We have the capacity for both, great good and terrible evil.
Right.
And the key is to recognize these influences and make conscious choices that align with our higher selves.
So it's not enough to just like follow our instincts.
No.
We have to develop a deeper understanding of our faith and strengthen our connection with God so we can recognize his guidance.
Yes, exactly.
But how do we distinguish between like angelic inspiration and satanic temptation?
Well, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, he stresses the importance of cultivating our spiritual faculties,
Right.
Through prayer, reflection, and study of the Quran.
Right.
The more we align ourselves with God, the more receptive we become to angelic influence.
Okay.
And the easier it is to kind of resist those negative forces.
It's like tuning our inner compass to the right frequency.
Exactly.
But if angels are these powerful beings influencing the universe and our lives, like, why don't we see them?
Well, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad explains that angels are, imperceptible to our physical senses.
So no chance encounters at the coffee shop.
Well, he doesn't rule out the possibility of them manifesting in human form for, specific purposes.
Right.
But for most of us, our interaction with them is on a spiritual level.
So it's more about like feeling their presence, sensing their influence.
Exactly. He talks about those with heightened spiritual awareness, being able to perceive angels in visions and dreams. But for most of us, it's about recognizing those subtle nudges, those moments of like unexpected inspiration, that feeling of guidance and protection.
That's actually really beautiful.
It is.
It's like knowing there's this whole unseen world operating alongside our own, full of beings that are dedicated to our well-being.
It adds a whole new dimension to, our understanding of reality.
It does.
Earlier you mentioned Mirza Ghulam Ahmad's idea about God changing his commands.
Right.
It seems like a pretty radical concept.
It definitely caught my attention.
Yeah.
What did he mean by that?
He's essentially saying that God's actions are perfectly suited to the needs of creation at any given moment.
Okay.
Just like, a parent adjusts their approach as a child, grows.
Right.
God's commands evolve to meet the ever-changing needs of humanity in the universe.
So God isn't like changing his mind.
Yeah.
He's just like adapting his actions to suit the circumstances.
Remember his example of the laws of nature?
Yeah.
They operate consistently,
Uh-huh.
but their expression varies depending on the context.
Right, like gravity acting on a feather versus a boulder.
Exactly.
Same force, but the outcome is totally different.
Uh-huh. So God's attributes are constant.
Right.
But their manifestation can change based on the situation.
It's almost like he's like a master chess player, strategically moving pieces across the board to achieve a specific outcome.
That's a great way to visualize it.
Yeah.
And angels are like the pieces on that chessboard, carrying out those divine moves.
Okay.
Influencing the course of events and guiding us towards our ultimate purpose.
This deep dive into the world of angels in Islam has really opened my eyes to their significance.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It is. It is.
Mirza Ghulam Ahmad's perspective really challenges us to look beyond, the superficial.
Yes, to see the interconnectedness of all things and to recognize the profound, albeit subtle influence of these spiritual beings.
He encourages us to consider.
Okay.
If angels are constantly working behind the scenes, shaping the universe and influencing our lives,
right.
How can we become more attuned to their presence?
That's a great question.
How can we foster a deeper connection with these forces that are dedicated to our well-being?
That's such a great question to ponder.
It is.
If we could tap into that angelic guidance, imagine the possibilities.
Right.
It's like unlocking a hidden potential within ourselves, aligning with the forces of good in a way that we never thought possible.
Exactly.
Yeah, it really makes you think about all those hidden connections, like we've been so focused on the material world that we've kind of neglected this whole other realm of existence that's operating alongside our own.
It is easy to get caught up in the day-to-day,
right,
and lose sight of the bigger picture.
Yeah.
But as we've seen, there's so much more to reality than what we can just, see and touch.
This deep dive has really shifted my perspective. Angels aren't just, characters in stories or religious texts. They're active agents in the universe.
They are.
Influencing everything from like the formation of stars to the whisper of inspiration in our hearts.
And it's not just about like passive influence,
right?
As Mirza Ghulam Ahmad explains, angels are constantly working to maintain this balance,
right,
between good and evil. Remember those shooting stars?
Yes,
they're a reminder that there's this constant struggle happening. On a spiritual level.
It's almost like a cosmic dance between light and darkness.
Yes.
And we as humans are right in the middle of it, navigating these forces with every choice we make.
That's the beauty and the challenge of free will.
Yeah.
We have the capacity for both, incredible good and terrible evil.
Right.
But understanding the influence of angels and their counterparts can help us, make more conscious choices.
So it's not just about like blindly following our impulses. It's about cultivating like discernment.
Yes.
Recognizing the subtle nudges, the whispers of guidance that might be coming from, the angelic realm.
Exactly. And that's where our own, spiritual development comes in.
Right.
The more we strive to align ourselves with God,
right,
the more receptive we become to those positive influences.
It's like strengthening our spiritual antenna, tuning into that divine frequency where we can, better perceive the guidance and protection of angels.
And remember, that connection isn't a one-way street. Mirza Ghulam Ahmad talks about the profound impact of human actions on the spiritual realm. Our choices have these ripple effects that extend beyond our immediate understanding.
So it's a reciprocal relationship. They're not just like passive recipients of angelic influence. We're active participants in this cosmic dance.
Precisely. Our prayers, our good deeds,
Right.
even our intentions, they all contribute to this interplay of forces.
Yeah.
And that's incredibly empowering, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
It means we have a role to play in shaping the world around us, not just on a physical level, but on a spiritual level as well.
And knowing that we have these benevolent forces working alongside us, guiding us, protecting us,
Right.
it gives us, this sense of hope and purpose.
This deep dive into the world of angels in Islam has been eye-opening, to say the least.
It really has. It's given me a whole new appreciation for the unseen forces at play in the universe in our own lives.
It has.
And it's challenged us to think beyond the limitations of our physical senses, to recognize the interconnectedness of all things.
Yes.
And to consider the profound impact of our choices on both the seen and the unseen realms.
So to our listener, I encourage you to continue exploring this fascinating topic.
Yes.
Delve deeper into the teachings of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad and other scholars. Reflect on the role of angels in your own life.
Yes.
Pay attention to those subtle nudges, those moments of unexpected inspiration.
Yes.
You might be surprised at what you discover.
And remember, the journey of spiritual discovery, it's ongoing.
It is.
There's always more to learn,
Right.
more to experience, more to connect with.
Well, on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive.
Okay.
Keep those minds curious, those hearts open. And until next time, happy exploring. All right, get ready, because today we're going deep on a topic that I think has fascinated people forever.
Yeah.
Angels.
Right.
We're going to explore, what they are, what they do, why they matter. And we're going to be looking at this all from the perspective of Islamic teachings.
And I think it's interesting, you don't have to be like a super religious person to be fascinated by angels.
Right.
Whether you're coming at it from, a faith perspective or just a general curiosity.
Yeah.
A cultural thing, or just even, love of lore.
Sure.
There's something about these beings that's just universally captivating.
I agree. There's something just mysterious and alluring about the idea of these, powerful, otherworldly beings existing alongside us.
Right.
But for this deep dive, we're going, beyond the general ideas. We're going specifically into some characteristics.
Right.
14 to be exact.
Okay.
As outlined in a 1920 speech by Hazrat Mirza Bashir Uddin Mahmud Ahmad, the second Khalifa of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community.
It's really interesting. He breaks it down, and he draws directly from the Quran to paint a picture of angels.
Right.
That might surprise you.
Yeah.
It's not all fluffy wings and halos.
Right. And, a lot of people would assume that angels are this purely Christian concept, but, they actually play a very significant role in Islam as well.
Absolutely. And I think one of the most fundamental things that's different is, in Islam, angels are defined as creations of God.
Okay.
And this is stated explicitly in the Quran, in Surah Al-Safat.
Okay.
And that directly challenges the Christian concept of the Holy Spirit as being part of God himself.
Right.
A belief that's not shared in Islam.
So right off the bat, we're establishing, angels are created.
Right.
They're separate.
Yes.
That makes me wonder, though, what are they created from?
Yeah, that's a good question. And that's a question that, goes into some pretty deep theological territory.
Sure.
What we do know from the Quran is that they're described as being created from light.
Created from light? That's pretty poetic.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of reinforces that image of them being radiant, ethereal.
Yeah.
But if they're made of light, does that mean we can see them?
Well, that's where things get a little interesting.
Okay.
The source material tells us that you can't see angels with, typical everyday vision.
Oh.
To perceive them, you need what's referred to as like spiritual eyes.
Spiritual eyes. So it's not so much about physically seeing them.
Right.
It's about perceiving their presence.
Yeah, it's more on a different level.
Okay.
And there's even a verse in the Quran, Surah Al-An'am, that sheds light on this. And it says that, if God were to send an angel as a messenger to humans, he would make that angel appear in human form to avoid confusion.
That's really interesting. It suggests that their true form is not something that our human minds can even grasp.
Right.
But if they can take on human form, does that mean they have a gender?
That's another great question.
Yeah.
And that's one that the source material directly addresses.
Okay.
And according to Islamic teaching, angels are genderless. They exist beyond the categories of male and female that we apply to humans.
So no heavenly ladies with harps or burly warrior angels?
Not quite.
Okay.
The Quran specifically refutes the idea that angels are female.
Okay.
But it doesn't assign them a male gender either.
Right.
It's more about recognizing that the concept of gender just doesn't apply to them as spiritual beings.
Okay, so we've got that angels are created by God.
Right.
They're made of light. You can't see them in their true form.
Yeah.
And they're genderless.
Right.
It's a lot to take in.
It is.
But it also makes me wonder, how are these beings organized?
Yeah.
Is it just a free-for-all up there?
Right.
Or is there some sort of system?
There's definitely a system, a very intricate one.
Okay.
The source material describes 3 distinct ranks of angels,
Okay.
each with specific roles and responsibilities.
Right.
And this hierarchy is supported by verses in the Quran,
Okay.
suggesting that it's not just random, but a reflection of divine order.
Right. A divine order. So the way that angels are organized tells us something about how God operates.
Exactly.
Okay.
Think of it like a, perfectly structured organization.
Okay.
At the top, you have the highest rank, the angels who bear the throne.
Okay.
These are the ones closest to God,
Okay.
directly carrying out his most important commands.
Right.
A position of immense power and responsibility.
Wow, that's pretty elite company right there.
Yeah.
What about the other ranks, though?
So below them, you have the angels who encircle the throne.
Okay.
Their primary role is to relay instructions from the highest rank down to the lower ranks.
Okay.
Think of them as like the messengers,
Yeah.
the intermediaries, making sure the communication flows through the angelic realm.
So there's a clear chain of command.
Yeah, just like in a well-run organization.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what kind of information's being passed down.
Right.
But before we get into that,
Okay.
tell me about the third rank,
Okay.
the largest and maybe the most mysterious.
Yeah, so these are the angels assigned to what we might consider smaller tasks.
Okay.
Although in the grand scheme of things,
Right.
even the smallest task can have a significant impact.
Mm-hmm.
The source material, drawing from the Quran, specifically Surah Al-Mudaththir, tells us that their number is beyond human comprehension.
Wow.
It's only known to God.
Countless angels, each with a specific purpose.
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling.
It is, yeah.
But it also makes me wonder, if they all have these designated roles, does that mean they have free will?
Right.
Can they choose to disobey,
Yeah, that's a great question.
go against God's commands?
That gets to the heart of what it means to be an angel.
Okay.
And the answer, according to Islamic teachings, is no.
No.
Angels are inherently incapable of sin.
So they're like perfectly obedient servants,
Right.
always following orders.
Yeah, they're perfectly designed to carry out God's will.
But does that mean that they're just mindless automatons?
Not at all. It's more nuanced than that. They do possess a certain degree of understanding.
Okay.
They can even engage in, complex moral reasoning.
Okay.
And there's a fascinating story in Sahih Muslim, one of the most authentic collections of sayings and traditions of the Prophet Muhammad, that illustrates this point beautifully.
A story about angels. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So this story revolves around a man who had committed many sins throughout his life,
Okay.
but had a change of heart
Right.
and decided to seek repentance.
Okay.
He set out on a journey to find a scholar who could guide him, but sadly he died before reaching his destination.
Oh, that's tragic. So what happened to his soul?
Well, that's where the angels come in.
Okay.
The angels of heaven and the angels of hell gathered to debate his fate.
Okay.
The angels of heaven argued that he should be granted paradise
Right.
because of his sincere intention to repent,
Okay.
while the angels of hell insisted that he deserved punishment for his past deeds.
Wait, hold on. Angels are arguing? I thought they were supposed to be perfectly obedient.
Right, and that's the fascinating part.
Okay.
This story highlights the fact that while angels are incapable of sin,
Okay.
they're not simply mindless robots.
Right.
They can analyze situations,
Okay.
they can weigh options, and they can even disagree with each other,
Okay.
but all within the confines of their predetermined nature.
So it's like they have this limited free will. They can think for themselves, form opinions,
Right.
but ultimately they're bound to follow God's final judgment.
Exactly.
And this story, it also raises some questions about the nature of repentance and the role of intention in divine judgment.
Yeah.
But I think that's a conversation for another deep dive.
Another time.
But for now, let's stick with these angels and their fascinating characteristics.
Yeah.
So we've learned that they're organized in ranks. They're incapable of sin.
Right.
But they can still engage in this complex moral reasoning.
Yeah.
What other surprising traits do they possess?
Well, one of the most intriguing aspects of angels is that they're not just messengers or servants.
Okay.
They're also described as manifestations of divine attributes.
Manifestations of divine attributes.
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
It means that each angel embodies a specific quality or characteristic of God.
Okay.
Think of it like this. God is the source of all things,
Right.
good and perfect.
Okay.
And those qualities are reflected in the angels.
Okay. I think I'm starting to get it.
Mm-hmm.
But I need an example. I'm officially mind blown here.
Okay, so let's take the example of the angel Gabriel,
Okay.
who plays a central role in Islamic tradition
Right.
as the one who revealed the Quran to the Prophet Muhammad.
Mm-hmm.
Surah Fatir in the Quran mentions angels having varying numbers of wings.
Okay.
2, 3, 4, or even more.
Wings, huh? So we're talking like literal wings.
Well, it's open to interpretation.
Okay.
Some scholars believe that, these wings are symbolic,
Okay.
representing, different attributes or levels of spiritual power. And there's a hadith, a saying of the Prophet,
Okay.
where he describes Gabriel as having 600 wings.
600 wings. That's a lot of wings.
It is.
I'm guessing that's not meant to be taken literally.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's more about emphasizing the immense number of divine attributes that Gabriel embodies.
Okay.
His vast spiritual capacity.
Right.
He's not just a messenger. He's a reflection of God's power and knowledge.
Wow. That's a powerful image.
Yeah.
So angels aren't just delivering messages.
Wow.
They're embodying the very essence of the message itself.
That's a great way to put it.
All right. I'm officially mind blown. We've learned that angels are created from light.
Yeah.
They're organized into ranks.
Right.
They have a limited kind of free will but can't sin. And they're even manifestations of divine attributes.
Right.
What a fascinating and intricate system.
It really is.
And this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to explore about these celestial beings and what their existence reveals about the nature of God, creation, our own place in the grand scheme of things.
Right.
Well, I'm ready to dive deeper.
Awesome.
Stay tuned as we continue our exploration of the 14 characteristics of angels.
Yes.
Uncovering even more surprising insights about these enigmatic beings.
Okay. It's fascinating how these 14 characteristics of angels really challenge a lot of the common assumptions we might have about them.
I know. I definitely came into this deep dive with a pretty romanticized image of angels, thanks to all the paintings and movies out there.
Right.
But it turns out they're a lot more complex and nuanced than I ever imagined.
Absolutely. And I think one of the most striking aspects, at least from the Islamic perspective, is their unwavering obedience and dedication to fulfilling God's commands.
Yeah.
There's no room for rebellion or going rogue.
Right. They're not like fallen angels or
Right.
demons or anything like that.
That's a whole other theological can of worms.
Exactly.
So in Islamic teaching, angels simply don't have the capacity for evil.
Okay.
Their very nature is oriented towards good,
Okay.
towards carrying out God's will flawlessly.
It's like they're programmed for goodness,
Right.
but not in like a cold robotic way, more like they inherently understand
Right.
and resonate with the divine will.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And I think, that inherent understanding is what makes that story about the angels debating the fate of the man who died before repenting
Yeah.
so intriguing.
Yeah, that story really stuck with me.
Yeah.
It kind of seems to contradict this idea of angels being completely devoid of free will.
It definitely challenges that simplistic notion.
Okay.
The story really highlights this key point that the second Khalifa is emphasizing.
Okay.
Angels possess a degree of understanding and can engage in moral reasoning,
Okay.
even though they ultimately can't disobey God.
So they're not just blindly following orders. They can analyze situations,
Yes.
weigh options, and even have different opinions.
Exactly. And so this limited free will,
Right.
this ability to engage in moral deliberation within the framework of their divine purpose adds, I think, a whole other layer of complexity to how we understand angels.
It also makes you wonder, if angels can have these different perspectives, on a situation,
Mm-hmm.
does that mean there's like a hierarchy of understanding among them?
That's a fascinating question.
Like, do some angels have a deeper grasp of God's will than others?
Right, and that's not something that's explicitly addressed
Okay.
in the source material.
Right.
But it's definitely something to ponder.
Yeah.
The fact that, angels can have these different interpretations,
Right.
even if they're ultimately bound to follow God's final judgment,
Right.
it suggests that, maybe their understanding of the divine will could vary.
It also makes you wonder about the nature of that divine judgment.
Yeah.
If angels can disagree, does God ever have to step in and settle a debate?
Now, those are the real mysteries. But, maybe let's shift gears a little bit
Okay.
and explore another aspect of angels that we touched on earlier.
Okay.
The idea that they're manifestations of divine attributes.
Oh, yeah, that really blew my mind.
Yeah.
It's such a profound concept.
It is.
This idea that, the qualities that we associate with God,
Right.
like mercy, justice, power, and love,
Yeah.
can actually be like embodied in these beings.
It's a powerful image, isn't it?
It is.
And it really, I think, challenges us to consider how we might reflect
Yeah.
those attributes in our own lives.
Right.
If angels can be manifestations of God's qualities,
Right.
what does that mean for us as humans
Right.
who are also created in God's image?
It's like we have this potential to be like walking, talking embodiments of those qualities too. But of course we do it in a way that's uniquely human,
Right.
with all of our complexities, our contradictions.
Yeah.
We make mistakes, we struggle, but we also have this capacity for growth and change that angels don't.
That's such a key point.
Right.
Angels are fixed
Right.
in their roles. Their purpose is predetermined.
Right.
But we have this incredible gift of free will,
Yeah.
the ability to choose our path
Mm-hmm.
and to strive to become more like God in a holistic sense.
So it's not about trying to become angels ourselves.
Right.
It's about recognizing those divine sparks within us
Yeah.
and nurturing them.
Exactly. Our journey isn't about reaching some static state of perfection.
Right.
It's about continually evolving, learning, and growing closer to God
Right.
by embodying those attributes
Yeah.
in our thoughts, words, and actions.
That's a really beautiful way to think about it.
Yeah.
It's not about, achieving some far-off ideal.
Yeah.
It's about integrating those divine qualities into our everyday lives.
Exactly.
But I have to admit, I'm still kind of stuck on this idea that angels, despite their closeness to God,
Yeah.
don't have knowledge of the unseen. It's like, why wouldn't they have access to that kind of information?
Yeah, it's a question a lot of people have pondered.
Yeah.
But I think it comes back to this fundamental difference between the creator and the created.
Okay.
Angels, as powerful and magnificent as they are still creations.
Right.
They operate within the framework of God's design.
Okay.
They're not privy to the inner workings of his plan in the same way that he is.
It's like they're given the knowledge they need to fulfill their specific roles.
Right.
But the bigger picture,
Yeah.
the ultimate plan, remains a mystery even to them.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And, maybe that's part of what makes them so awe-inspiring.
Right.
They operate with this incredible level of trust,
Yeah.
surrender to God's will, even without knowing the full scope of his plan.
It's a level of faith that I think most of us probably struggle to attain.
Yeah.
We want all the answers, all the details,
Right.
before we're willing to take that leap of faith.
It's definitely a human tendency. We want to control, understand everything.
Right.
But maybe there's something to be said for embracing that mystery, recognizing that there are limits to our human understanding.
It's humbling, for sure.
Yeah.
But it also makes you appreciate the vastness and complexity of creation.
Yeah.
And speaking of complexity,
Right.
we talked about how angels are specialized,
Mhm.
different angels assigned to different tasks.
Yeah.
Do we actually know anything about those specific roles?
Right.
Besides, the angel of death,
Yeah.
angel of the mountains.
Those are definitely the most well-known.
Right.
Probably because they deal with pretty significant events.
Right.
But the source materials suggest that there are countless other angels,
Wow.
each with their own unique purpose.
Okay.
Some are responsible for guiding rain clouds,
Wow.
others for protecting believers,
Okay.
and still others for recording our deeds.
It's like a giant cosmic bureaucracy,
Right,
with
yeah.
every aspect of creation meticulously managed by these angelic specialists.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's an angel of lost socks or an angel of traffic jams.
Maybe. Who knows?
Right.
But, I think the key takeaway here is that
Okay.
no matter how small
Yeah.
or seemingly insignificant an event might seem,
Right.
there's a divine order at work,
Okay.
a purpose behind it all.
Right.
And angels are the instruments through which that order is carried out.
It's comforting to think that even amidst the chaos of life, there's this unseen hand guiding things, making sure everything unfolds according to God's plan.
And even if we don't always understand that plan,
right.
even if it seems, unfair or confusing at times, we can trust that it's ultimately for our benefit, for the greater good of creation.
It's a reminder that sometimes we need to just let go of our need for control, surrender to the mystery, and trust in the wisdom of the divine.
Beautifully said, and I think that's a perfect note to end on.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of angels. Learning about these 14 characteristics has really shifted my perspective.
Yeah. What's been like the most impactful takeaway for you?
I think, honestly, the idea that angels embody specific attributes of God, it's just so profound,
Yeah.
It makes you realize that, those qualities, mercy, justice, love, they're not just these abstract concepts. They're active forces in the universe, personified in these beings.
Yeah, it's a powerful image, and it challenges us to think about, how we might reflect those attributes in our own lives.
Right.
If angels can be these manifestations of God's qualities,
yeah.
what does that mean for us as humans?
Right. Created in God's image.
Right.
It's like we have this incredible potential to be walking, talking embodiments of those qualities too.
Yeah.
But of course we do it in a way that's uniquely human, with all our complexities, contradictions. We make mistakes, we struggle, but we also have this capacity for growth and change that angels don't.
That's such a key point.
Yeah.
Angels are fixed in their roles.
Yeah.
Their purpose is predetermined.
Yeah.
But we have this incredible gift of free will.
Right.
This ability to choose our path and strive to become more like God in a holistic sense.
So it's not about trying to become angels ourselves. It's about recognizing those divine sparks within us and nurturing them.
Exactly, yeah. Our journey isn't about reaching some static state of perfection.
Right.
It's about continually evolving, learning, and growing closer to God by embodying those attributes in our thoughts, words, and actions.
That's a really beautiful way to think about it. It's not about achieving some far-off ideal. It's about, integrating those divine qualities into our everyday lives.
Okay.
But I have to admit, I'm still a little bit stuck on this idea that angels, despite their closeness to God, don't have knowledge of the unseen.
Right.
Why wouldn't they have access to that kind of information?
It's a question that a lot of people have pondered.
Yeah.
And, I think it goes back to that fundamental difference between the creator and the created.
Okay.
Angels, as powerful and magnificent as they are, they're still creations.
Right.
They operate within the framework of God's design.
Okay.
They're not privy to the inner workings of his plan in the same way that he is.
It's like they're given the knowledge they need to fulfill their specific roles.
Right.
But the bigger picture, the ultimate plan, remains.
Yeah, and it challenges those common pictures we have in our heads, like angels as these super ethereal beings with their wings and harps. The Quran actually gives us a view that's much more nuanced and maybe even, well, dare I say, bureaucratic.
Bureaucratic. Huh. What do you mean by that?
He says angels are definitely creations of God. They're not divine themselves.
Right, right.
And this is a point that really sets the Islamic view apart from some other belief systems.
Yeah. I see how that's like a foundational thing. It sets up this clear hierarchy right from the get-go.
Exactly. And you see this hierarchy emphasized throughout all 14 points. Angels, they exist to carry out God's will.
Okay.
And they are, as one verse puts it, stern and severe in their obedience. Unwavering obedience.
Stern and severe, huh? Not exactly the first thing that pops into my mind when I hear angel, but it does kind of emphasize how dedicated they are to their duties.
Yeah, it's definitely not those whimsical, wish-granting angels we see so much in pop culture. But, this whole idea of them being so obedient, it raises some really interesting questions. Like, if they can't sin, does that mean they just don't have any ambition or even desires? How does being kind of static like that contribute to their perfect obedience?
It makes me wonder, if they can't evolve, if they can't progress, then what's the point of their existence in the first place? What's their purpose in the big scheme of things?
That's a good question. And that kind of leads us to, I think, one of the most interesting and most misunderstood aspects of angels, their connection to divine attributes.
Okay, now let's break that down a little. What does it even mean for an angel to be like a manifestation of a divine attribute?
Okay, think of it like this. You have a prism,
Right.
and it splits light into all its different colors. Each color represents a different attribute of that light.
I'm with you.
In a way, angels are kind of like those colors. Each one embodies, each one reflects a particular quality of God. Power, mercy, justice, knowledge, all of those.
Wow. So instead of seeing angels as these like individual beings with their own agendas, we should be trying to understand what part of God they represent.
You got it. It's a totally different way to look at them.
Yeah.
One that moves us away from those images we make up in our heads and towards a deeper appreciation for their role in reflecting, well, God's nature.
You know, this reminds me of what Hazrat said about angels having like fixed abilities. He references that story in the Quran where angels couldn't name things the way Adam could. If we think about this whole divine attributes idea, could we say that human potential, our ability to learn and grow, is that like a reflection of a divine attribute itself?
That's a really cool connection. It suggests that, yeah, while angels might embody specific attributes in their perfected form, humans, with our ability to grow and evolve, maybe we're meant to reflect the very essence of divine potential.
That is a really profound thought. Changes the whole narrative, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Makes you wonder why this difference even exists. Why create beings with fixed abilities and others with the potential to grow without limits? What's that tell us about God's intentions for both angels and humans?
Well, my mind's officially blown now. This is way deeper than I thought it would be. But before we dive too far into these like huge existential questions, let's get back to Hazrat's points. I'm really curious about this whole invisibility thing.
Yes. The unseen realm. So Hazrat really emphasizes that angels, we can't see them in their true form. The Quran even says that if an angel appeared in human form, it would just cause confusion. It's almost like they exist on a whole other frequency.
Yeah, this idea that you need spiritual eyes to see them, that's really fascinating as a whole other dimension to how we understand reality,
It reminds us that there's so much beyond our physical senses. Realms we may never fully grasp, filled with beings and forces we can't even imagine. It makes you wonder, if angels are working behind the scenes all the time, carrying out God's will, how can we even begin to get our heads around the scale of what they're doing?
It's definitely humbling, and to think we haven't even gotten to the angelic hierarchy yet.
Right. Another key thing Hazrat Ahmad brings up, he describes this whole system of ranks, distinct ranks. Some angels are directly doing God's will, others are like go-betweens, and others have these very specific tasks.
Makes you think about how the unseen world is structured, how it's organized. If angels are so methodical, so organized, what does that say about the divine order itself? It's like we found this like cosmic org chart or something, angels in all these different roles with their responsibilities. This whole idea of a celestial bureaucracy, it's pretty mind-boggling.
Yeah, it definitely challenges those more, romanticized ideas we have about angels, like they're just kind of floating around on clouds, free spirits.
Right, exactly. Instead, we have this image of like a seriously structured system, every angel with a specific part to play in this grand scheme. And it makes me think about another point that Hazrat Ahmad made about angels not being able to sin. If they're just naturally good, always obedient, how does that fit into this whole hierarchy thing?
Ooh, that's a good question. Really insightful. It kind of suggests that this hierarchy, it isn't based on like merit or competition, the way we see it in the human systems. It's more about them fulfilling a role that's, predetermined, a role that just fits perfectly with who they are.
So it's not like some angels are trying to climb the ladder, get a promotion in heaven or something. Their position is fixed, just like their abilities.
Exactly. And that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, the divine attributes. If each angel embodies a specific attribute, then where they are in the hierarchy, maybe that shows how important or how strongly that attribute is manifested.
Man, this is getting pretty deep, but I'm kind of loving it. So the angelic hierarchy, it might not just be about tasks and who's in charge, but about showing the core of God's nature itself.
Yeah, you got it. And this brings up another question that's super interesting. Hazrat mentions that angels, they don't actually know everything that's unseen.
Right.
We tend to think of them as like all-knowing, but the Quran tells a different story.
Yeah, I remember that point. He even brings up a verse about Judgment Day. The angels have no idea that some humans were worshiping them.
Exactly. It's a good reminder that even these powerful beings, they have limits. Their knowledge is tied to what they do, the tasks they're assigned. But here's the part that gets me thinking. If angels are manifestations of God's attributes, right? And one of those attributes is infinite knowledge. How can we say angels have limited knowledge?
Whoa. Yeah, that's a tough one. Almost like a paradox or something.
It does seem that way, doesn't it?
Oh,
And
yeah.
maybe that's the whole point. Maybe it's telling us that even the idea of infinite knowledge, our human minds can't really wrap themselves around it. We're trying to take something limitless and fit it into a limited box.
I'm starting to realize that the more we dig into this, the more questions pop up. It's like every answer we get just leads to another mystery.
And isn't that the cool part of exploring these concepts? It's not about getting these definite answers, but about growing our understanding, appreciating how vast and complex the universe is, both what we see and what we don't.
Definitely a shift, you know? It's not about those black and white answers anymore. It's about being okay with the mystery.
I like that. And that takes us to something that people debate about a lot, free will. Hazrat, he suggests that angels, they might have a little bit of free will, a very limited amount, of course.
I was surprised by that, I'll be honest. I always thought angels were like programmed to obey God. No choice involved.
It's definitely complicated, nuanced. There's that Quranic verse where the angels, they question God about creating humans. You know, the ones who might mess things up.
Right, right.
And there's a hadith about angels disagreeing over where to take the soul of a man who was asking for forgiveness. Both of those suggest that maybe there's some internal discussion going on, you know, like they're weighing things.
So it's not just blindly doing what they're told. Maybe it's more like they have this deep understanding of God's will and then just a tiny ability to think about it, maybe even question it a little.
Maybe so. It kind of challenges the idea that angels are just robots, following orders without thinking. But even this limited free will is way different from what we humans have, which, well, often leads us to do things that go against God's guidance.
It seems like free will, even for angels, it's all tied up with who they are and what they're here for. Their choices, if you can even call them that, are always about serving God's will.
And that loops us back to the main idea we've been talking about. Angels as these, like, reflections of God's attributes.
Mm-hmm.
If we look at their actions, even the ones that seem like free will, and see them as reflections of God, it adds a whole other layer to how we understand it.
Okay, this is getting pretty intense. Give me a sec to process all this. We started talking about angels with harps, and now we're analyzing bureaucracy, free will, divine attributes. It's like a whole new universe just opened up to me. I feel like we've been on this incredible journey, you know, peeling back these layers of understanding about angels with each point.
It is pretty amazing, isn't it, how these simple statements about angels, they lead to these huge questions about God, creation, even our own existence.
And speaking of our existence, it makes me think about the role angels actually play in our lives. I mean, we've talked about their, like, divine purpose and all, but how do they actually interact with us humans?
Well, that's a question that's had people fascinated for, like, forever. While the Quran doesn't give us a how-to guide on angelic intervention, it does give us these glimpses into how they might be influencing us.
Okay, so no summoning circles or magic spells to get their attention.
Not exactly. Remember, angels are mainly about doing God's will, right? They're working within his plan. Everything they do is lined up with that purpose.
So it's not about us controlling them, it's about God directing them to step in when it's needed. But how do we even recognize that? Do we have, like, guardian angels watching over us?
That idea of guardian angels, it's definitely popular. And while it's not spelled out in the Quran, there are verses that hint at angels protecting believers, guiding them. For example, there are mentions of angels keeping track of what we do, going with believers into battle, even helping us when we pass from this world to the next.
So instead of having one angel assigned to us, it's more like God uses angels, you know, as needed to carry out his will in our lives, whether that's protection, guidance, or even giving us challenges.
I like that. It's about seeing angels as this, like, woven part of God's plan all around us. We might not always see them or feel their presence, but they're there, working in the background.
This reminds me of what we talked about angels having fixed abilities. Could it be that how they're involved in our lives is limited by those specific attributes and roles?
That's an interesting idea. Maybe certain angels are better suited for certain types of interventions. Like, you know, it's a divine task force. Each angel brings their own skills on what they're good at.
I like that, divine task force. But if we can't see them, can't hear them, how do we know when they're actually, like, working in our lives?
Well, I think that's where faith comes in and discernment. It's about paying attention to the subtle stuff, the synchronicities, those moments where you feel guided, protected, and you just can't explain it.
Give me an example.
Imagine you're in a super stressful situation, right? And suddenly you feel this, like, wave of peace wash over you. Or maybe you get an opportunity right when you need it most, and it seems like it came out of nowhere. Those can be signs, Angelic intervention, working through God's plan.
I've definitely had moments like that, where I felt this, support or guidance I couldn't explain. But how do we know it's not just, coincidence or our own intuition?
Right. And that's where discernment is important. It's about thinking about those experiences and seeing if they line up with how God guides us, as it's revealed in the Quran. We're not saying every good thing is because of angels, but it's about being aware and recognizing that, divine intervention could be happening in our lives.
So it's about balance, right?
Yeah.
Recognizing that angels might be involved, but not thinking they're behind absolutely everything.
Exactly. And in the end, it really comes down to faith. Trusting in what we can't see. This belief in angels, it's not something science can prove or disprove. It's a matter of the heart. Recognizing that there's this whole realm beyond what our senses can pick up.
This whole conversation, it's really changed how we see things. It's not just about learning facts about angels. It's about understanding these unseen forces in the universe and how they might be affecting our lives.
And that's the beauty of this deep dive. It's not about reaching those final definite answers, but about making us curious, making us think, and really appreciate the mystery of creation.
It's been amazing exploring these 14 points.
All right, ready to dive deep into a topic you guys have been requesting a lot, angels.
Angels.
But we're going to be looking at them through a very specific lens, the lens of Islam.
Oh, very cool.
You sent over some fascinating excerpts from An Elementary Study of Islam, which is a book by Hazrat Mirza Ahmad.
Okay.
And I think it's safe to say this is not about the cherubic little baby angels that you see in Renaissance painting.
Right.
We're going way beyond that kind of imagery to explore what angels actually are in Islamic thought.
Yeah. One of the most interesting things that jumps out from this text is this idea that there is a fundamental difference in how angels are often portrayed and how they're actually understood in Islam.
Yeah, I mean, we're so used to seeing angels as these winged figures, almost human-like.
Right.
But this source is really painting a different picture.
It really is. And at the core of it is this idea that angels are purely spiritual beings.
Okay.
Existing outside the realm of materiality.
So not something we can see or touch or hear.
Yeah, exactly. Outside of our five senses.
It's almost like trying to explain color to someone who's been blind their whole life.
That's a great analogy because as humans, we understand things through our senses, right?
Yeah.
We touch, we see, we hear. But spirit, that's a concept that really challenges that.
It really does.
And the Quran actually mentions angels having wings.
Right. I was just thinking about that.
But then it uses that same word wings to describe a son's mercy towards his parents.
Okay, so we're talking about a metaphor here.
Yes.
What are these wings actually representing then?
It's about powers and attributes that are beyond human capability, kind of like how other religions use symbolism.
Right.
Like if you think of Krishna in Hinduism, often depicted with multiple arms.
Right.
No one believes that he literally has extra limbs.
Right.
It's representing divine powers.
Okay, so we're getting a sense of what angels are not.
Right.
They're not physical beings, and those wings are symbolic.
Exactly.
But what do they actually do in the grand scheme of things?
So according to the Quran, angels are essentially administrators of the cosmos. They're upholding the laws of nature, making sure that this whole intricate web of existence runs smoothly.
So like making sure the planets stay in orbit, the seasons change, that sort of thing.
Exactly. But it even goes deeper than that.
Oh.
The source specifically mentions viruses, bacteria, even entire ecosystems being regulated by angels.
Wow.
It's fascinating to think that delicate balance you see in a rainforest,
Right.
the predator-prey relationships, how resources are distributed, it's not just random chaos,
Right.
Islamic thought suggests that there's this carefully orchestrated system behind it all, and angels are the ones behind the curtain.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So every time I see a perfectly balanced ecosystem, I should be imagining these unseen forces orchestrating it all.
It's definitely a different way of looking at things.
Yeah, it makes you think how much of what we see in the natural world is actually governed by forces that we can't even perceive.
Absolutely.
Okay, so this is already making me rethink my entire walk in the park later.
Right here.
But, there's one angel, or I guess supposed angel, that always seems to grab the spotlight.
Right.
Satan.
Yeah.
And from what I'm seeing here, this deep dive has a surprising take on him.
It does the infamous fallen angel.
Yeah.
What if I told you that that's a misconception?
Wait, really? Isn't that a core part of his whole story?
It's a common belief for sure, but according to the Quran, Satan was never an angel to begin with.
Okay.
He belongs to a completely different category of beings called jinn.
Jinn. Okay.
Creatures made of fire.
Oh, wow. So that whole fallen angel narrative is completely debunked according to this Islamic perspective.
It is.
That's a pretty major plot twist.
Yeah.
So if he wasn't a fallen angel, where does Satan fit into all of this, and what are these jinn all about?
That's where things get even more interesting, and we'll unpack all that and more, including their role in the universe, right after the break.
All right, we'll be right back.
Welcome back. So let's dig a little deeper into this Islamic understanding of angels.
Okay.
Particularly how they interact with humans.
All right, so we've established that angels are these powerful spiritual beings, but how do they actually communicate with us, mere mortals? I mean, do they, send us cryptic messages in our dreams or appear in a flash of light? What's going on here?
Well, the source actually offers a fascinating glimpse into this.
Okay.
Through a story about the angel Gabriel appearing in the Prophet Muhammad's mosque.
Oh, a story. I'm all ears.
So picture this. The Prophet is sitting with his companions in the mosque when suddenly this stranger appears.
Okay.
Impeccably dressed, no signs of travel, but no one saw him arrive.
Okay, that's already pretty strange.
Right. And then he starts asking the Prophet a series of questions about Islam.
Uh-huh.
What's even stranger is that he disappears just as abruptly as he arrived.
Hold on, so no one saw him come or go?
Exactly. It's like he just materialized out of thin air.
That's wild.
The Prophet later revealed that this mysterious stranger was actually the angel Gabriel in disguise, appearing in human form to teach the Prophet's companions through this really interesting Q&A session.
So angels can shape-shift and appear as humans?
That's what this tradition suggests.
Does that mean that, any stranger we meet on the street could potentially be an angel in disguise?
I mean, it's a possibility, right?
Wow.
It highlights this idea that angels can interact with us in ways that we might not even recognize. They might not always have glowing halos and feathery wings.
Yeah. I'm starting to look at everyone a little differently now.
I think that's good.
But, this whole idea of angels interacting with humans kind of makes me think about another aspect we haven't really touched on yet.
Okay.
Prophecy.
Yes.
Their connection to prophecy.
Yeah, that's a key element, right, in the Islamic understanding of angels.
Right.
This source really emphasizes that angels play a crucial role in transmitting divine messages to prophets.
Okay.
Acting as intermediaries between God and humanity.
So they're like the ultimate messengers.
Yeah.
They deliver God's special deliveries.
Precisely. And the most well-known example, of course, is Gabriel revealing the Quran to the Prophet Muhammad.
Right. Gabriel's like the VIP messenger, delivering God's word to humanity.
Yeah.
But if angels are these purely spiritual beings, how do they actually convey these messages? Do they speak in some celestial language?
The source doesn't really go into specifics about the mechanics of divine revelation,
Okay.
but it emphasizes that angels are inherently obedient to God's will.
Uh-huh.
They carry out their tasks with this precision and this unwavering loyalty.
Got it.
So however those messages are transmitted, we can kind of trust that they're delivered exactly as intended.
Right. I mean, it's kind of like how we don't question how radio waves work.
Right.
We just enjoy listening to our favorite music.
Exactly. A great analogy. The key takeaway is that angels play this vital role in connecting humanity to the divine.
Right.
Bridging this gap between the spiritual and material realms.
This is really painting such a different picture of angels than what I initially had in mind.
Yeah.
It's so much less about those stereotypical winged figures.
Right.
And it's more about these powerful unseen forces that are shaping our world. And remember, the exploration doesn't stop here, right? I encourage you to keep thinking about this, dive deeper into those Quranic verses we talked about, and work on that awareness, that sense of the divine presence in your own life.
Who knows what mysteries you might uncover? So keep those minds open, those hearts open, and let those spirits soar. Until next time, happy exploring.